to Drummers Only Radio. Drummers Only is the UK's leading drum shop with store locations in Glasgow and Leeds. Our podcasts are full of interviews, gear reviews, and much more from the unique perspective of a drum shop. The show is hosted by two pasty Scottish dudes who talk real fast. Whoa, slow down there, Braveheart. So here's Chris, the Glasgow shop manager, and Adam, the social media manager. Be sure to like, subscribe, and let's do this.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Drummers Only Radio. It's Legend Week in the new year. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and New Year and all that, but we are here with a current living legend, Mr. Jay Weinberg. Hello, Jay, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm really well, man. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. For those of you who may be living under a rock for like the last 10 years, Jay is one of the sort of leading lights in the world of metal because he plays for a really small band called Slipknot and has done for like the last 6 years, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. Who's counting?
Yeah, totally. We really, I can't believe you've got time to fit us in, man. So this is really special for the people at home and for us here. So
my pleasure.
We're just gonna dive right in, man. So you come from a pretty legendary drumming household, man. It's no secret at all who your dad is. Max Weinberg plays for the boss, for Mr. Springsteen. So how was that growing up for you? Was that a thing? Drums always around and all that?
It's very interesting because like in a sense, yes, like, you know, music has been a huge part of my, you know, my growing up and my childhood, but it wasn't like drums weren't like just immediately around, you know, like maybe people might think. You know, when I was born in 1990. The E Street Band had disbanded in 1988. So I wasn't really even familiar with that element of my dad's life. Like I didn't, for the longest time, I didn't know what it was. And then even when I found out what it was, I didn't quite understand it. I was like, okay, you're in a band. You guys are huge. There's like tens of thousands of people here looking at you guys. I don't get this at all. It took me a while to understand it, but that said, you know, when they started the Late Night with Conan O'Brien program in 1993, you know, I don't have memory for what that was like when that was starting, but he was in New York all the time, you know, which is about like an hour and a half from where I grew up in New Jersey, and he was commuting. So I had even kind of a distance between that element of, you know, my dad's career and his life and my own understanding of music and how it relates to my own family and stuff. My mom was and is very musical. Mm-hmm. She just started a band a couple years ago. In fact, like she's still, you know, she kicks ass playing music. But, you know, so they were showing my sister and me lots of music growing up. The Who, the Beatles, the Stones, Bob Dylan, the band. That was all kind of like our bread and butter, what was played in our house. But it wasn't anything like I saw my dad playing drums from a very early age. I kind of had this distance from it where I had like these amazing music educators, but I never really had this like tactile, you know, experience with it until that changed in 1999 when the E Street Band returned to form and they're on tour and I'm watching my dad play these like 4-hour shows. I was like, I didn't even know you were capable of that. Like, you know, it was like, you could imagine somebody who's never heard of Bruce Springsteen, E Street Band, known any of that. I didn't know any of it. So you could imagine my shock when all of a sudden I'm thrust into being on tour with them and trying to take all that in and understand it without any context, like at all. So, but I started putting it together and then, you know, realized that there were these records from their past and so on and so forth. And so I put it together, but it took me quite a while. And then I didn't start playing drums until I was about 14 years old. Okay. You know, which is relatively like, from what I understand, you know, just speaking to friends and stuff, they're like, oh, I started playing drums when I was like 2 years old. I'm like, yeah, it kind of came to me, you know, relatively late, I suppose. But there's no, who's to say when's an appropriate time to start doing anything, you know?
Yeah, totally.
That was when that was shortly after I was introduced to like punk rock and finding out bands that spoke to spoke to me on some level, some youthful, level of excitement and energy and stuff. I gravitated towards that. And that's when I started finding out what I liked about music that I didn't even know yet. And so much of that, I mean, to tether that to today, so much of that was from a chance meeting with the guys in Slipknot when I was very young, when I was 10 years old. They came on the late night show, and they, at that time they were, the Conan show was having bands every night, and my dad would see a lot of bands, but he saw this one band that was just like, oh my God, this is nothing like anything I've ever seen. They met and they were like, hey, you ever want to come to a show? Like, yeah, bring your kids, like, let's hang. And he they kept their word. He kept his and was like, wow. Hey, let's go to a Slipknot show. And we went to Ozfest when I was 10 years old. Wow. And met, those guys back then. We carved out a friendship. And lots of twists and turns later, here we are. But yeah, so like music has always been a huge part of my upbringing, my household. I came to music in such like a strange roundabout way, considering how meaningful it is in my own family's life. But there's no right or wrong way,
No, not at all, man. There's so much to unpack just from that like one answer. Like it's so cool that your parents sort of didn't shield you from it, but it also wasn't just like thrust down your throat. By the way, your dad is like this enormous, he's played in this enormous like world renowned band. It's just like, yeah, music's cool. Music is it's this cool thing that we like, and we sometimes do, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was very pure like that, like we to this day, we enjoy so much about, music and art. And I mean, just the other week, I was finally able to, go visit my parents, and we went to a museum about Machu Picchu, and stuff, which is where my wife and I got engaged. And so like we love, so much of my life with my, my family that I'm so happy to be able to share. It's just a passion for creativity, art, history. My mom was a history teacher. So there's so much to learn and unpack there. My parents especially had like a passionate understanding of like wanting to expose us at a young age to what inspired them. And hopefully that would translate in its own way, and I feel it has. And when I was traveling with the E Street Band as a kid, literally like a child, I would be with my mom, and we'd make a conscious effort to like every day, because she was a teacher, so they let us come out of school for like 2 months. I'm in like 7th and 8th grade. They would let us come out of school because they're like, hey, well, you are you're a teacher. You've been a teacher in your own right for a long time. Yeah, you can teach the kids while they're on the road. And she was militant about it. Like it was probably even harder than actual school was. But, we'd wake up in the morning. It's like 6 a.m. doing, schoolwork, afternoon, going to a museum. And when we're traveling, we're seeing all these places where you can only see this work of art in this one museum at this remote location in the world. Wow. And then at night we'd go watch Dad, rock 60,000 people, and we would do that. That was like our life, it's like you work hard at what you're meant to work hard at. And at that time it was, work hard at school and take in lots of, like work hard, play hard, it always had this sense that like, no matter what we were doing, even if it was like a relaxing, trip to a museum or something, it still was like invest yourself in that experience. And to me, that was where I developed an interest of doing my own visual art. We would go to a museum and I would just take my notepad and I would sit in front of a painting and like copy it for like 3 hours. They would just let me just sit there and just doodle, Wow. So that was a really great experience in this like very organic way of introducing, me, my sister, and me to not just music, but just a world of creativity, and that there's no boundaries between anything. There's no boundaries, even though people might perceive a sonic boundary between Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band and Slipknot. Like I talk about that sometimes of like, oh, these are two very different things, different styles of music, which is true, but also the passion and energy is totally equal, and to me, that's where it all comes from. Like that stems from this sense of passion and really respecting the importance of art and music and giving your full attention to it. That's all you need to carry you through performing with Bruce or performing with Slipknot or whatever. And so I'm very grateful for that education at an early age where it felt like there were no divisions. There were no, dividing lines between like, well, you should be into this, you shouldn't be into this. It was like, there's so much out in the world that you can take in, try to take it all in.
Well, the beautiful thing about that is it makes the education well-rounded, which means that you become a well-rounded person so that you don't see these dividing lines between music. It's all just music, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I find, as I've gotten older and, as you just invest your time into, wanting to create something that's uniquely yours, or being in a collective that creates something that's uniquely the collective, such as Slipknot. I find that, as a drummer, as a creative person, you're better served having this understanding that there are no dividing lines, and I can take inspiration from something that maybe to a surface level listener you wouldn't necessarily see or hear that inspiration for a loud, aggressive, crazy song. Inspiration came from a totally different place, because there are so many factors into. I feel that's what leads artists to create the most interesting and engaging output is when inspiration comes from a myriad of different places, and you just kind of funnel that through your filter of experience into what you're doing.
I think it shows in the playing as well. I was watching Kill Pop today. There's a Zildjian performance, and there's like some really mega 16ths on the hats, and it's just but it oozes groove, and it oozes groove in a way that you probably wouldn't consider a band like Slipknot to have a groove. Because because of the nature of the music, and it's dynamic in a really different way than like the E Street Band or the Band or the Who. But it doesn't mean that stuff can't move in a way that music moves as well.
Yeah, totally. And I think referencing a song like Kill Pop, that was among the first batch of songs that I was working with the guys. Especially back then, like Clown Jim and myself were like holed into a studio working for like a month and a half with them literally, quite literally throwing the book at me, just making sure they're like, all right, if this is our guy, we got to make sure he's our guy.
Right.
And I remember, was it Kill Pop or some other song? I forget, but might have been Sarcastrophe that we were working on for a bit. But we would do this stuff where they would like send me into the room and just like, we were having so much fun, it's just like that instinctual, like kid-like wonder of having fun playing music. I would be in the live room recording drums, and they're like, okay, this part, just go crazier. And then this next part, just go crazier. And so, we're spending like all day in a linear fashion, right? So we're going from like the start of the song, and I'm just like working out parts and just like, get crazier, get crazier, get crazier. And then like we came back the next day with like fresh ears, and we listened to it, and we're just like, oh my God, that like
brilliant,
so over the top. Like, okay, he's our guy. We know that now. Now we can focus. And but that was one of the songs. So Kill Pop, one of the songs that, to my recollection, Jim had very well structured out map of a song, kind of what he had in his head of how he wanted it to go. Verse, chorus, what have you, and stuff like that. Like we were referencing a lot of, maybe not in a sonic sense what we're inspired by, but more of like a mood. Clown will use the word temperature, which I think is really fitting. Like what kind of temperature do we feel is this song? And it can dip, it can dip and dive and do all sorts of things. But we kept we're talking about like Radiohead Kid A or Blur 13, stuff like that, that were kind of touchstones, I think, for like Jim writing these songs. And so once you can kind of take yourself out of the headspace of like, you know, it's Slipknot and it's full on all the time, and you can kind of take a step back and be like, you know, let these influences maybe not come out sonically through what you're doing, but spiritually be like, how did that make me feel? How did that thing that I'm inspired by, I remember how that made me feel. Yeah. So then, yeah, when you're talking about different rhythmic ideas that are thrown out there, you might hear it and be like, wow, that's really, you know, that's really different for us. And especially back then when I'm, you know, the concept of like me with Slipknot, it was very new, and I'm getting used to that and trying to feel out respectfully where my place is in a Slipknot song.
Yeah,
that was very important to me, but to also be like, but it's got to be something new, it's got to be something different, it can't be where this band has gone before. And I think them knowing how much they know this music is a part of my life, because we have that friendship that's gone back years. They knew that it's like he gets where we come from, and the fact that where we're going, we have no idea, you know, and we learn that as we go. And that's true today, you know, with what we're making today. So the fact that if we can record something, listen back to it and be excited with the idea that we can all agree this fits in the context of Slipknot, but it's different, and we like that, then let's chase that. Then let's go with that, because to us, that's the most exciting thing. And when you're creating and you're just in isolation working on new stuff, it is a very selfish form of expression. You're just doing it just to make yourself amped on what you're creating with your collaborators. And then as long as we're excited about it and want to crank it in our car, then we can release that. And then once we release it, it's not ours anymore. Now it's everybody's. But we can rest easy knowing that we're pushing what we're doing into new directions. And I feel like Kill Pop was an important step in that, even if it was just insofar as my own understanding of my role within Slipknot and the mission of Slipknot in general, to be, you know, true to what we do. But because it's true to what we do, it means it's got to be pushing forward and not what we've done before.
Yeah, I think evolution like that is a funny thing. I remember, I think it was Billy Corgan said something like the general public doesn't really want a band to evolve. They don't like it. They want just more of the same. But for a band to stay sane, it has to keep going, because you can't keep doing more of the same.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that's where like the benefit of, I feel as both a prior, you know, listener, strictly listener of the band, and, you know, one with the audience taking in what I took in for 4 Slipknot records, and having such an intense familiarity, for lack of a better way of describing it, you know, like you know, being a student of music and being a student of this band, they also knew that. They knew that it's like, this dude has studied our music his whole life. Like, we've seen it his whole childhood. So knowing that I have an intense understanding of that, I think that was like, okay, well, that's one conversation we don't even really need to have. It was like, he'll know and appreciate the experimentation in that, to keep it interesting for us and to keep the music just not stale for anybody listening. Like, if we just kept writing the same stuff over and over, it would, like, people would not enjoy that. Not like we really think about that, but it's like, for anybody that wants another Iowa record, you know, with all the respect in the world to the lineage of the band and to a record such as Iowa or something, it's like, you don't want another Iowa. That Iowa is that. Look, we're doing different stuff. Like, that's of no interest to us to make something that has already been made. And that's how you keep it vibrant and exciting. And we hope that vibrancy and urgency and stuff translates. I think, honestly, a perfect example of that is a song like the Chapeltown Rag, our newest song, that, you know, we've been working on new stuff this whole year. And so to finally put something out like that to me feels like a very sharp, accurate, representation of, having that urgency, keeping that love for what it is that we do. And Slipknot, I think by and large is known for, but doing something totally new with it. That was very exciting to me. So the fact that that's our current body of work is pretty awesome and exciting in and of itself.
Yeah, I think just you referenced Radiohead earlier, and it's just like, yeah, just look at how their career has gone, because I'm of an age where I remember OK Computer coming out, and then I remember Kid A coming out and being like, whoa, like, it's just like they took everything, all that success, and just rejected it. Like, see ya, we're going to do something really weird, Amazing.
Yeah.
And necessary for them, I think, at the time, because they just weren't used to the chaos that level of success brought. But yeah, I think that's the only way a band can keep going, man, and stay current. There's so many bands have fallen victim to just churning out the same kind of music, and after a while, there's just like, your venue size gets smaller and smaller, and before you know it, you're playing like, you're playing rooms with 300 people. You've gone from stadiums to nothing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think for us, like when we have those moments when we're in isolation in a studio, and whether that's while we're actively playing, there's a certain look that we'll give each other that's just like, okay, this is right, this is correct, and when we're listening back, and if like, to me, the best test is when somebody starts laughing. In a way, not that like, oh wow, this sounds funny. It like you start laughing because you're so. I mean, there's just a genuine joy that comes with playing the music that you love, So I feel like when I hear something that I'm really proud of that we're working on, I start laughing in the studio, just like I can't believe that this is what we're up to.
Yeah.
Chapeltown was certainly like one of those moments where I'm just like, this is wild, man. And that's everybody working on it. That's the band, that's the people that we surround ourselves with, that we're working with. It's a great feeling when you're able to tap into that. It doesn't come easy. You have to work at that. But yeah,
it's like any relationship. But man, that's like just down a rabbit hole and round a bend. The question I had earlier, coming on from sort of how you grew up with music, was to then you having to sit in for your old man, and then before you know it, you're on the road doing his gig. That must have been absolutely bonkers. I mean, you must have been what, 25?
Oh no, I was
21 maybe.
The first time I played with them, I was 17.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had been playing drums for 3 years at that point.
Wow.
But to me, like that's literally my family.
Sure.
It's literally my blood relative, my father. Who I've been digesting his body of work since I discovered it when they got back together. And, for lack of a better term, my uncles, like these are all my aunts and uncles who are in the band, it's like, this is literally my family. So that helped in getting me comfortable with being faced with that. But it was all completely born out of just, a scheduling conflict with, the start of the Tonight Show and a Bruce tour. We're just not, my dad would have to be in 2 places at once. And I was the last of the children of the band members to get up on stage and play with the guys in the band. And to me, just because it's a daunting task, it's like I had just started playing drums. And if I'm messing up, like you can't just take the drums down in the mix. It's horrifying for me. But I did it one time. I played, my dad convinced me to play Born to Run with them at a sound check. And it went fine. It was great. And I was like, okay, I played at Giant Stadium. I played at Soundcheck. That's all I got to do. And then it was, to Bruce's credit, he was like, you should play that during the show.
I love that the first song he makes you play is like a 6-minute Uber hit.
Yeah. Having done that, and then the scheduling conflicts kind of just happened. Bruce and my dad had a conversation, more like not even as, who they are in the music world, but like literally just as fathers. Like, hey, we got to figure this out. Would Jay want to do this or be able to do this? Because learning one song, I think Bruce said it's like, really all it takes is just one song to learn what somebody's about. But that's just one out of hundreds of songs that we would be playing. But the way that group really rolls, especially under the direction of Bruce, it was as comfortable as a monumental task like that could be. But yeah, we ended up playing probably a couple hundred songs together. I was learning 5 songs a day on the tour that we'd then play later that night. Or he would call out songs that I've never heard of before while we're on stage. And I've said it before, but it's just like, there's really that's not a normal thing for any band leader or any band to do routinely night after night. But it's something about the musical character of them, and as a band leader, Bruce, to instill the confidence in an 18-year-old to play a song he's never heard of in front of tens of thousands of strangers in a random country somewhere in the world. So then after having that experience, that's as intense as it could possibly get. Maybe not like energetically musically, but when you're playing 4-hour shows, I suppose so. But then that attention to what my role was at that time has just lent itself to everything that's that I've encountered since, and for sure that's put on steroids when it comes to the context of Slipknot, which is infinitely more and sometimes just as intensely challenging as that was, just in different ways. But yeah, filling in for my dad when I was 17, 18, 19 years old was it prepared me for for a lot of things that have happened since.
Well, there's very few musical educations as sort of solid as that. With the wealth and experience that collective band has in order to impart how to play, just come on, man, that's just incredible. I watched the 09 Pink Pop Born to Run, and your time is just amazing. You just it's just rock solid. You just hold them right on, but without you've got all the passion and spirit that one needs to have to play in that band. It's how does a guy that young do that? In front of all those people with very little experience behind you. It's really impressive, man.
I'll say maybe driven by fear, fear and adrenaline, and the desire and drive to rise to that occasion is so much of it. It's this is for lack of a better way of saying it, it's like high stakes rock and roll. This is rock and roll that means a lot to so many people, and I'm here to be the vehicle for these reasons of. This is literally my family, and I'm here to serve, this band that's existed for long decades before I was born.
Yeah.
I've got a job to do here, and to do it well. And I have no choice but to just go, 100% forward. I can't approach this with any hesitation, or whatever. I just got to go for it. And when you're able to do that, in any aspect of life, I think if you're able to just kind of go without abandon and just invest yourself in the moment, that's such a huge thing that has informed everything I've ever done. So I think having people around me that I was comfortable being around and being very supportive of wanting me to do well in that was huge. And then really realizing once you break it down to its more bite-sized elements, you take away the big crowd, the big stage, the history that's obviously there that they've created, the lore, the legend of the E Street Band. Once I was able to figure out in my head how to just put all of that aside, you're just playing music. And it's and that's what I do, and once I was able to really just understand that, it took the pressure or what I would perceive as outside pressure. It puts all of that to the side. And I think, it's a credit to the people that I was playing with because they made me feel like that. They made me able to compartmentalize things, just worry about my contribution to this. Because if you start thinking of as a drummer, so much weight and importance lies within how you're rhythmically carrying things. Sure. Once you're able to kind of like forget about that and just realize like, here's my contribution into this and how I can allow everything to rise, above that or whatever, that was easier for me to understand. And I apply that today.
I think the thing about it is it was so evolved for someone so young. That's like, it's kind of mind blowing. Like you sat in that band like you'd been playing it your entire life. It's amazing to watch.
Thanks, man. Well, I think and a lot of studying, like, I'll give you an example. There was a lot of songs we just didn't rehearse, and he would just call out, with like the signs that audience people would have, like, all right, we're playing this song. And a lot of that was, I was going back to being a kid watching them from the side of the stage because like this is Murder Incorporated. This is one of my favorite songs. Yeah. We never played that together until we were playing it in a show. But that's because I studied every little nuance of them performing that song my whole childhood. It's not to say that it wasn't for a lack of preparation, but I was preparing for this thing that I had no idea I was preparing for. Yeah. Just because I think it was important for me to be naturally interested or naturally like investing myself in studying. Like, God, what these guys do, it's insane. I want to study it because I love watching them. And I still do. I can't wait till they go back out on tour so I can watch, you know?
For sure. Amazing. So going through all your sort of the way you were, the music you were given when you were a kid, how does one arrive at metal and punk? Is it just a natural thing because of your age and what was around at the time and what was coming through? Or is it because of the meeting with the boys in the band when you were young? How do you get there?
Well, I think, the age at which I met like the guys in Slipknot, that opened the doors of like, oh, there's a whole other realm of music that is so far advanced beyond what I'm familiar with, I mean, I've been listening to, I Want to Hold Your Hand. And now all of a sudden I'm being confronted with People Equal Shit. Like, how do we get from point A to point B? Like, I had a lot of studying to do because I knew this thing. I knew I loved this thing. I had no idea why I loved this thing, but I wanted to learn more about it. So seeing Slipknot for the first time was the genesis of my my interest in heavy metal, punk rock, hardcore, just gnarly, wild, crazy, chaotic music. I found out that I loved it that day. I didn't know where to look. I didn't know where to look though. I didn't know where to, what direction to go in. There's so much. But once I realized, these bands go on tour with other bands, and I went to see the second time I saw Slipknot was a couple months later. And they were being supported by, I want to say Mudvayne, System of a Down, Rammstein, maybe. Wow. I forget. I mean, I was like literally 11 years old. Then I start, I gotta listen to these bands. And then I see those bands are on tour with these other bands, so on and so forth. One pivotal moment for me was I remember hearing music from my sister's room, and she was listening to a band called The Used. Oh yeah. And I was like, what is that? And she told me it was a band called The Used. So I looked them up, really got interested in their first record. I think it had just come out. And similarly to how I had met the Slipknot guys, The Used came on the Conan O'Brien, program. And for me, I had the unique opportunity to go up and visit my dad at work, and I could see this band that I just found out about, and I struck a friendship with them, especially their drummer and one of their founding members, Brandon Steinecker, who's still one of my best friends to this day. And it was seeing Brandon play that made me think, because to that point, like metal and all this crazy stuff, like it seemed like it was from a different planet to me.
Right. Yeah.
And I didn't know how I could get to that planet. But when I saw Brandon playing, there was something about it that was very impressive. Like he's an amazing drummer in his own right, but his approach to it, it's like something conveyed to me. I was like, that looks like he's having so much fun. And it looks like I could, if I work hard, I could one day do that. You know, I want to do that when I grow up, you know. And it was seeing Brandon play that gave me that first, like, even though I had seen my dad play for years, you know, it was seeing Brandon play that made me be like, I want to pick up drumsticks. And it wasn't for like maybe 2 more years. I didn't start playing drums till a little while after that. Excuse me. But after then finding out about the used, then I find out about stuff that's happening in my own backyard. You know, I come from New Jersey, where you had, you know, especially in the early 2000s, you had new records that were very, you know, cornerstone albums in the sort of scene that were like, you know, Thursday, Full Collapse, or War All the Time from Thursday. My Chemical Romance, when they were first starting to get people's attention and stuff. That was all happening like in my backyard. Lifetime, the Bouncing Souls, all this like New Jersey punk rock stuff that I was getting turned on to, where I could see these bands like 10 times in a year.
Yeah.
You know, that was huge for me. And the fact that I was able to like strike up friendships with these bands because of their proximity to me, the audience member, you know, I was able to see them and talk to them at the merch table and become friends with them, because I was always the guy who was on the, you know, front barricade shouting the words and investing myself in that music. So that's where, you know, to me, like, I always had a passion for, you know, for punk rock and you know, like being in DIY punk bands growing up and stuff, and just really taking inspiration from those bands, the Bouncing Souls, Avail, you know, bands like that, that broke the barriers down between band and art and audience. Meant a lot to me. But I also really appreciated like advanced musicianship to, you know, to a certain degree, you know, like watching, you know, I go to a Slayer show. And just watching Dave just go, you know, wild. That was, you know, that was like another element to where it's like, okay, I love, you know, this punk rock that, you know, anybody can do, you know, it's more about the spirit and the energy that goes into it, but also really respecting drummers and musicians who have clearly worked at something to get so advanced at their instrument and have something unique to say with it. And to me, you know, and that's a classic example. Even take Dave and what he's doing currently with the Misfits. You know, it's like it's a perfect through line of that, where you know, you can take somebody who has this advanced skill set, applying that to punk rock, which is so just emotion and intensity driven. You know, maybe less so than chops or whatever, but bringing those things together was like really interesting to me. You know, Travis Barker is another example of like taking really amazing, you know, punk rock that has, you know, melodic sensibilities about it. You know, it's like it's pop punk, but there's so much more in that. Yeah. And then taking this like amazing musicianship where you have a drummer who can flip things on his head and make something very interesting to listen to. That goes back to what we were talking about, like approaching a song like Kill Pop for, you know, a band that's kind of known for heaviness and speed and all this, but taking interesting ways of taking that music, but making it something completely new, because your filters are totally different and the way you perceive music takes in from all these different inspirational points. I'm really glad that I grew up in an era where these things were coming together, like these very basic art forms, but with this very interesting way of approaching like the technicality behind it. They came together in really interesting ways. And I mean, you know, you see the paths that bands like that, bands like, you know, like us have continued to try to have that be like a focal point of the music. It's very interesting to me. Yeah, absolutely. Bands like Tool as well, where it becomes all about rhythm rather than about facility, you know, and how they can make that digestible for people, make it groove and write great music around it, you know? Yeah, well, that's storytelling too. You know, like that's like musical storytelling, you know, like, I mean, the depth to where, you know, you have a band like that, there is so much thought and complexity that they're a band unto themselves, you know, in a league of their own. And I think that's the high watermark that you always just kind of want to achieve. Not necessarily like, oh, you know, no band wants to be like, oh, let's be like that band.
Yeah, totally.
But I think let's be the best version of what we can do, and go the deepest into what we are, and hope that comes out.
Yeah.
You know, that's a really powerful thing. And I think taking inspiration from that is super important.
Absolutely. Switching gears a bit, because you mentioned sort of technical facility. Yours is pretty good, man. I was watching some stuff earlier, like, shit, how does singles so clean round the drums, so powerful, but at tempo, like on a massive stage in a huge room. How do you get to develop that, you know? Because that shit's not easy, and to keep that shit going all night for 6 months.
To me, it's all like, it really just boils down to, it's like, this is what's required of me, you know. Like, I think there's such an element of you know, one thing that I wanted to as we started playing together, it was a cornerstone of just like, you know, take for example the day I auditioned for the band, where they didn't tell me I was even coming to a studio to play with Slipknot. It was just, you know, here you are, and there's a drum set, you'll audition for Slipknot in 20 minutes. And
wow.
And to me, all I wanted to convey in that moment, and really all I've wanted to convey since, is, you know, these guys are entrusting in me a very important role, you know, to execute this music in a way that's true to the spirit of where the band not only comes from, but where the band wants to go, and to be a part of that, and to really invest myself in that. So, you know, showing up on the day with no preparation, it's like, all right, I just know, you know, I know the energy of what's required of Slipknot. I have no goddamn idea what it's like to play with Slipknot. But if I can convey the energy that I know this requires, that will carry me through. Yeah, right. And that's my everyday. You know, that's really my everyday, is investing myself completely in what it is we're trying to do. So obviously you have to be practiced in the music, but I think so much more of it comes from just the will and drive to make the music that we make. That's what gets me through the day and or through the night or whatever. It's like, it's just kind of separating yourself almost from thinking about it, and just being like, I'm the vessel through which this music is helping get out there. And that takes application, you know. It's definitely like, it's not easy for sure, like physically and spiritually, all that. Slipknot is the most challenging musical thing I've ever encountered. The most rewarding too, you know, like you get what you put into it, you get back what you put into it. Sure. And so, you know, it's come with time. I feel like we're at a much more advanced level of communication, musical communication between ourselves than we were when I first started playing with the band, you know, because there's so much to learn that you can only find out with time and with patience, and always being open to learning about the process, because the process just never stops. And the process of Slipknot, if you can kind of separate yourself from this thing that's bigger than any one of us, you can let it guide you into, you know, what it's demanding of you. Yeah. So as we kind of let that guide us, that informs how we present what we're doing on stage. And that's where so much of what we do comes alive. You know, we work really hard behind closed doors to make new music that's really engaging for us. But then, like, the pedal, you know, the rubber meets the pavement when it's on stage, and that's where songs really come alive. So, you know, with that in mind, the chops, the like we're saying, like the technique or whatever, it all just kind of gets dictated by what we're doing, you know? And so I've never really thought about it. I've never really thought about, like, well, I got to elevate my playing to such and such a level, you know. It's like, I've never thought about things that way. It's always just been like, I have to give 100% every single day. And, that's out of respect for these guys, my friends, my family, who have entrusted a very important role in this band with me. And so I take that very seriously. I take how I approach what we do very seriously. And I feel like, I've got to hope that just kind of translates into what we're doing, and I'm too close in the middle of it to really have that kind of perspective. But I just know that if I take what I consider the punk rock way of doing it, just getting up there and putting all of myself into what's expected of me, what I expect of myself, that's gotta, do something good, I think.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, because we are a drum store. It's kind of prudent. And man, firstly, congratulations. You've just had a new signature snare released, right? The Crucible.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. The Crucible.
Yeah. So how did you meet the guys at SJC? Because you've got an amazing relationship with those guys.
I do. To go back to how this is all really one thing. I met the guys from SJC through Brandon Steinecker.
Okay.
And Brandon went on from the Used to join Rancid. He's been in Rancid for a number of years now.
The Dexter Kit.
2006. Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that. So his Dexter Kit, I saw that and I was like, what is that? I wasn't familiar with the show Dexter. Like I knew of it, but I didn't watch it yet. And Brandon's like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with the show Dexter. And I met these guys that do this, this drum company, and they made this whole kit based on the TV show with the saran wrap that he wraps his victims in. Is the shell, instead of just being normal acrylic, it looks like that saran wrap. The badges are like the blood slides that he holds from all his victims. There's like cleavers all over and stuff. It was incredibly impressive. And I was like, I got to meet these guys, because that is like a perfect marriage between music and art, drums and art, bringing them together in a way that elevates, you accomplish something that you can't accomplish with just one or the other, it's together. And, and so he introduced me to the owner of the company, Mike Chapari.
Yeah, we've had Mike on.
Right on. Yeah. So Mike has become another, he's like a brother to me. He's one of my best friends. We, there is rarely a week or a couple days where he and I aren't talking. And so we got introduced through Brandon, and I told him about ideas that I wanted to creatively bring to just the drums I was playing. And I became a SJC artist in late 2009, 2010, maybe. And ever since then, we've just tried to, they've been with me for a lot of through a lot of stuff musically. And as we develop in our friendship and our what we want to explore creatively, we've come up with ideas like they put on a series of drum clinics that we've taken to Japan and done in the US and the UK. We met back in 2009, 2010, and we've just worked on all this stuff for years. So then when I joined Slipknot and couldn't tell Mike what I was doing, I was like, hey, I know you know me from being the guy with like one kick drum and one rack tom and floor tom. I'm going to need a kit that's like 2 bass drums and 3 rack toms and 2 floor toms. I'm gonna need 2 of those, because I'm gonna have to have one in one part of the world while another is set up at a different part of the world, because I'm gonna be doing a lot of traveling, and I can't tell you what it's about. And that was him being like, okay, what are you telling me right now? And I was like, one day I'll be able to tell you. And he followed me down that rabbit hole, and we've been able to, to do this amazing stuff ever since, and work on really out of the box creative things, with the drums. And so one of those was when I told Mike, it's a couple years into being in Slipknot, I was discussing with him what I was looking for sound and character wise with a new snare drum. And we got to talking about what we loved about, drummers from the early 2000s, very high tune, really aggressive, intense snare drums. And he got to developing this 48 ply maple snare for me with these 2 vents. And he was like, I want you to try this. And I tried it that night, and I've never looked back since. It's like my live staple drum set or snare drum. And when it came time to Mike and I discussing what we would want to do as far as like, he's like, hey, I want to do a signature. It's time we do a signature snare drum for you. And we've had a lot of drummers ask for like, I want to use what Jay uses on stage. And we're like, all right, let's offer just that. And I'll do the artwork on it. And let's provide an option to drummers that's exactly that 48 ply, beast. Massive, intense beast of a snare drum. So we did that, because we wanted to offer people exactly what that is, but also keeping in mind that it's like, that's a staple element of my sound, but I also experiment with like lots of metal snares in the studio and stuff. So that's where the idea of creating the Crucible came from. All my favorite kind of brass snares that you might hear on Slipknot records and stuff. A lot of the time, we wanted to offer something that kind of had that more creative character to it. Just a different approach to what I use and like to have in my arsenal. And between the 48 ply snare that I'm using on stage and the Crucible, which reflects kind of more so what I usually use in the studio, I find that represents, a little more well-rounded of an approach to how I like to have things in my my arsenal. But those are just two things that, in my long history with SJC, as we keep talking about new ideas. I mean, we just released the Crucible, a couple weeks ago, and already Mike and I are like, oh my God, no, we've got so many other ideas that are still just, always wanting to do something new, push the envelope. And that's what I really respect about the creative people that I'm really fortunate to be around, is everybody just wants to, push things forward, push things into new directions. And I'm very thankful for my relationship with SJC in that way.
Yeah, they're a really forward-thinking team, And the drums were kind of new to us when we started to take them on, obviously. But we opened, sort of potted history, we opened another branch of the store in Leeds. And the manager who runs that branch, you've met him, we used to work at Gear for Music, Jake.
Of course, yeah.
So he was like, SJC, like, we got to get SJC. He was like, we don't know anything about these drums. And they turn up and they're fucking great, man. Like, just even the stuff that they don't make in the US is really well built. It sounds absolutely killer. And they're just so forward thinking, man. It's great, and I love the family aspect of the brand as well. I mean, it leads to things like your engagement with the fans. Young Caleb is a customer of ours who you've had on stage and stuff. Like, that's there's not many guys do that stuff, man. There's not many guys are out being that engaged with the fans.
Well, I'll tell you what, because Caleb is a phenomenal example of that. What a young, amazing talent. I meet a lot of SJC drummers around the world, and it's always amazing to me, this kind of level of connection that we instantly already have.
Right.
I think that's because of the culture that Mike and everybody, the team at SJC, have fostered. Is that, like, everybody that I meet, if I meet an SJC drummer, like where you're at in the UK, we're already talking about, like, oh yeah, Mike's one of my best friends, and he and I email about this and that, and he helped me develop, this drum set that I got, that I'm, whatever. It's like, it's that story all the time. It's like they're very personally invested in their artists, their drummers that they support. And it is a culture thing. It's unlike a lot of ways that they'd be able to carry themselves. They do it true to form, total punk rock, do it yourself. Like when Mike and I have, we've done a couple series of drum clinics, and Mike is right there in the trenches with me. We did a series of drum clinics in Tokyo. We did 3 clinics in Tokyo in 3 days.
Right.
And like, literally flying from the United States to Japan, not sleeping, setting up all the stuff, all ourselves, booking the shows, getting everybody to get stoked to come on out and see what we'll put on. He and I, the whole team, like we're like none of us sleep the whole time just because we're completely invested in this whole process. Like nobody else is doing that. Yeah. That's amazing. Like that's true investment in making cool stuff happen and doing whatever it takes, and I really respect that. And that's how I want to approach things. So to align myself with similarly focused people is very important to me. And so SJC has that. And I think like I have something in common whenever I meet another, fellow SJC drummer. There's that little extra kind of commonality that we share. And I really love that what we've been able to do together, because SJC has certainly grown in the last 11 years that I've been an SJC artist. So to kind of grow, alongside each other has been one of the, greatest joys of my life. And we keep doing cool stuff. There's a lot more, like, we're very ambitious with what we want to do in the future. So there's lots more to come, because I feel like every time we sit down to talk about stuff, we're always like, man, we got to outdo what we did the last time. Like somehow, I don't know how we're going to do it, but like it goes back to the things we're talking about. If you invest the time and energy and passion into it, you can go all day and all night. You can go, you have like at least I feel like we have a seemingly endless reserve of energy to devote to this stuff, just because it means a lot to us, and that connection with other people who are coming to engage with it. It means a lot to us. So, we never want to let people down, never want to let ourselves down. And I just love that process. Yeah,
man. Listen to the way you speak about the brand and about your own sort of approach. It makes absolute sense why you guys are a partnership in that respect, why you play those drums, and very similar outlooks and ethos, like just even the way that brand became a brand, the hustle of getting on the Vans show or the Vans tour and connecting to all these people, to the point where the next year all the drummers are like, yo, where's Mike at? Y'all got to get Mike up in here. And Vans are like, oh, okay, like I suppose we better get this guy on. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's like I said, he's like a brother to me, and he has such a passion for the instrument, and to see people flourish, and to whether he's directly represented as a part of it or not, like he just wants to be around people doing cool stuff, and at the crux of it, at the end of the day, like that's the best true spirited way of doing it.
For sure. So what about you going forward, man, with the art and the drums? Is there any way you're looking to put that together? What's kind of next for you outside of the world of the band and things? What's going on?
I have a lot of stuff that I'm kind of continually trying to bring together the two. I have a lot of stuff that is kind of set, like now my dashboard is kind of like, now that we've explored a lot of bringing drums and art together this year and late last year, exploring with the couple snare drums that we've done, practice pad that we've created and stuff. I'm taking a little time more so to focus on compartmentalizing and doing just standalone art. I did some stuff with Evans Drumheads, where they're very talented in doing it. They'll print art really, really well, like high quality onto drumheads.
Yeah, totally. The inked by Evans and all that.
Yeah, so I wanted to explore that with them, and do pieces of art that I feel would be represented well on a drumhead, a circular canvas. Mm-hmm. And so spent a little time doing that, and that was really exciting to do, like a triptych of art pieces that are meant to be on drumheads,
right?
Not really in any other medium, but that's like another way of bringing together, drums and art that I really like. But I've been working on art for a number of years now that I won't be incorporating on drums.
Okay. That is just
standalone, canvas, bit like larger scale stuff too. Like I have stuff that's, 36 by 48 inches, or I have like a piece that's like a 6-foot square that's enormous and stuff. And so I'm finding ways to come out with that stuff. Like I think people are aware that I paint on like large scale format, but I've never really publicly displayed it, right? Really. So now that, SJC and I have accomplished a lot of these things, and we've been working really hard on the new Slipknot record, of course. Like that's my focus kind of 24/7. But when I feel like we're at a pausing point with that, and we're kind of waiting for the other things to catch up, just like, mixing songs and mastering them and, getting artwork for the record and stuff, then I can kind of put that accomplishment kind of behind me and focus on what I really want to sink my teeth into. So more so like the big, larger scale paintings. That's kind of what I'm focusing and bringing that into the world at some point soon would be really exciting for me. So that's kind of currently what I can focus on at home. That's what I'm kind of more so sinking my teeth into as we also, get ready for what we hope is some very exciting and busy times in the Slipknot world. So yeah, like we've got some things maybe with SJC and myself that we talk about where we're talking about like, oh man, it'd be cool to bring my art in some way to either a snare drum or maybe even a full drum set where, I could bring my art into it or have people kind of interactively be able to design their own drums with elements of my art in a way.
That'd be really cool.
And yeah, I mean, just taking the idea of customization, SJC custom drums. It's like, this is a team that really prides itself on the ability to customize as much as you can. Just if you can dream it, we can build it, and I feel like I'm part of that, having been intimately involved with the design process of all these things, down to the tension rods, what we're doing. I want people to be able to feel like they're getting their own kind of creative input into it. So if I can deliver on some artistic elements to these drums, but then give a customizable spin where people can even take that and customize it and warp it and make it different, make it more them.
Yeah, right.
Then we're kind of working together. And I find that could be really interesting. So without, diving too much into what Mike and I have been discussing, that's kind of like, that could be really cool where we get to kind of collaborate with other drummers, other, creative people who are like, I want something that represents my own playing, but with Jay's influence and Mike's influence and SJC's input, but be able to make it customized myself. Like I find, just being a fan, it was cool to watch what they've done together with Josh Dunn from 21 Pilots, how they've taken, a number of artistic pieces that, that are more Josh's character and give people the, the option of designing a whole kit with a wide array of artistic, pieces from Josh. That's really cool. And that's interesting to me, that you can, mix and match, customize things that are kind of working within the framework of what an artist has come to the table with. That's really cool. So I find that that's like a way of pushing the envelope where you get more user influence in it. It's influenced by the people who are going to be playing it, not just us saying this is something that's, it is a valid thing to be like, this is representative of what I love to play, which I think the 48 ply snare and the Crucible both are. But I think if we were to find some way to get our hands dirty with the people who are actually going to be playing these things, I think that could be really cool.
Yeah, well, it creates a better connection, doesn't it? Because they get to take ownership of it, as well as it being a partnership. It's still about their identity, and that's the point of customizing the drum kit. And if someone is finding their own path, their own musical journey through something that we've made available that's representative of where I kind of come from, and if I can, if I can be part of that for somebody finding their own voice, their own musical voice, that's incredible. Because I've had, drummers did that for me, like there was nothing quite like going to a music store and, when I'm a young person and going to a drum store and picking up a guy's signature drumsticks, right, and then going home and playing along to those records, like pretending I'm that guy or whatever, like that was so meaningful to me. Yeah. And it made you feel like you had superpowers, and that helped me learn about myself, helped me learn about what I want to accomplish in music. So yeah, if these things that I'm doing with SJC or with Vader drumsticks, if any of that helps
you know, especially a younger drummer find their own voice, that's like, I mean, game over. That's the ultimate thing to happen.
Beautiful. That's the best place to end it as well. It's the best.
Cool.
That's the best place to end it. Where can people find you on the socials, man, if they want to get in touch or say hello or...
I'm pretty readily available. Like I use Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that. Like anybody, you guys can Google me.
Yeah, totally.
You know, we're all very easily Googleable at this point in society. But yeah, you know, I love sharing what I'm up to creatively. I love seeing what other people are up to creatively, and we live in a fascinating time where you know, everybody's creative output is just you know, a click of the button away. So.
Yeah, so we'll be sure to like stick all your ats in the show notes so that people can get a hold of you and stuff, man. So listen, man, I so appreciate you coming on. It's been a great chat. I think this has been my favorite podcast, actually. It's been
awesome,
great.
Man.
It's been great. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. No, thank you guys for having me.
And we'll no doubt see you down the line.
Right on. All right. Take care, guys.
You too. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Drummers Only Radio.
You can find us online at www.drummersonly.co.uk.
Drop us a line. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Drummers Only UK.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. We're on Apple, Spotify and YouTube.
Any questions? info@drummersonly.co.uk is the email, or if you need leads, it's leads@drummersonly.co.uk.
Thanks again for listening,
and we'll see you next time.